Traders, how are you? With Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Elon Musk lost $16 billion of his wealth. We have the situation in the Middle East continuing to escalate. And one of the things that I found really interesting is that scientists discovered that there was a solar storm that was the strongest on record that hit the Earth 14,000 years ago. Let's get started. The instability in the Middle East continues to escalate. There's a situation now where it could continue to get out of control isn't the right word, but it could continue to expand now that Iran is threatening Israel, even though they're supporting people like Hamas and other terrorists, right? That if they do the ground invasion in Gaza, then they're going to go after them. Now, I'm going to give you a really general overview of the situation in the Middle East and why this can get really, really bad. Normally, there are two different types of Muslims that are Sunni and Shiite, and they don't like each other. An example would be Iran and Saudi Arabia. I don't know if you guys know of the situation in Yemen, which has been a country that's been destabilized, and there was a situation, if you guys remember, there was missiles actually shot into Saudi Arabia. But basically, a proxy of Iran, a proxy being somebody that Iran pays, they want to try to destabilize Saudi Arabia because they don't like each other. Simple as that. And on top of that, we have, Saudi Arabia being an ally of the United States and Iran hating each other, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of the overall view of kind of the Muslim world. I know this is not a detailed cover, right? I know most of you guys don't really kind of know the situation. So I just want to kind of cover it briefly to describe what it can escalate to, right? I'm not going to get political. I'm not going to pick sides. I want innocent people to be safe, but let's just leave it there. So the situation is now that if Israel goes into Gaza, the entire Muslim world is going to unite instead of having these factions that are fighting with each other, and they're all essentially going to go after Israel. Now, this can create a much bigger problem because now Russia is preparing their missiles. China now is sending warships. The United States has sent 2 warships as well. So this can be a really, really big problem. And they've already started to receive rockets out of the north as well of Israel. So not a good situation at all. And then what happens if it does continue to escalate? Things like oil can skyrocket, right? For you and I, that's absolutely horrible since the inflation has already been exploding over the last few years. So it's continuing to escalate. It's not a good thing, but at least as of yet, Israel hasn't done the ground invasion in Gaza, so things haven't escalated further just yet. Due to that instability in the geopolitical situation in the Middle East, how do I do with the overall view, right? Didn't pick sides, right? I always try to be apolitical. Don't want to pick one or the other, but that's kind of the situation, how kind of get a grasp of how it could really escalate. They did pretty good. Give me a comment. The stock markets in the United States and Canada, mostly negative due to that situation and the fear of what can go on and happen in the Middle East. Markets in markets in Europe, mostly negative as well, with Istanbul, Switzerland being the biggest losers there. Latin American markets, mostly mixed. Bovespa of Brazil, one of the largest economies in the world, largest in Latin America, fell over 2%. And Africa and the Middle East, mostly mixed. Egypt went up over 8% there. And then in the far, far east, Australia, Asia, that area, mostly all negative as well. Bitcoin and crypto news, Binance, which continues to be the largest crypto exchange in the world, has stopped accepting new UK users, people from the United Kingdom. And in the Binance US side, if you didn't know, there are 2 different entities, Binance International and then Binance US. Binance US is going to suspend all USD withdrawals as well. The SEC is dropping a lawsuit against the Ripple XRP executives. If you guys remember, they tried to appeal the court case that went against the government, but they didn't let them appeal. They dropped the appeal, and now they're kind of letting it go, it looks like. The biggest asshole in the world, second biggest asshole in the world after Bill Gates, excuse my French, but these guys are horrible. Sam Bankman-Fried, which is the previous CEO and founder of FTX, the now bankrupt crypto exchange, They used to be the second biggest in the world. They found out that he used millions in stolen customer funds to donate to US politicians. Most of them happen to be on the left. Bitcoin far, far higher this week, up over 10% at almost 30,000. Again, the situation with the fear of the geopolitical instability in the Middle East. Commodities, oil went up over 1% for U.S. crude. It got to just under $89. The international crude went up 1.40% at $92.16. Not a good thing, right? They could even do, if you guys know the Panama Canal in the Middle East, there's a Strait of Hormuz, which passes through essentially, think of this is Iran, this is Saudi Arabia, you know, the Horn of Africa, right? Not Saudi Arabia, excuse me. But there's, think of it like Saudi Arabia as an island kind of, right? And the two waters kind of go up this way. And where Egypt is, there's another canal like the Panama Canal, but a lot of the oil tankers that come out of Saudi Arabia and Dubai and all those places go through this water that sits on this side, which is on the border of Iran, and Iran could just decide not to allow any oil tankers through. So look at it on a map. They have to go through the Horn of Africa, which is notoriously known for Somali pirates, and then do the turn and then just go through to get to places like, you know, Europe and other places, so they don't have to go all around Africa. Same thing as South America. They could just go through the Panama Canal. But they could escalate pretty quickly. There's an Egyptian billionaire called Naguib Sawiris. He's made his money in gold and telecoms. He considered an investment in Barrick Gold's Reko Diq deposit in Pakistan. This is one of the most underdeveloped mines and one of the largest mines that is underdeveloped in the world. It's on the border of Afghanistan and Iraq, and they're saying that it's capable of producing 200 tons of copper, 250 ounces of gold for more than 50 years. If they develop the mine. Florida farmers have spent over 20 years grappling tree diseases, freezes, bad weathers that have absolutely decimated orange crops. There's now less than half of the amount of farmers that have orange groves than what it was in the year 2000. And soon we might not even have oranges anymore in Florida. Good news when it comes to the food front. There's been a record U.S. harvest of corn. This might be the third largest ever that's going to strain storage capacity. If you guys remember, literally 2 years ago, due to the situation in Ukraine and then the climate and the pandemic situation, we literally had corn prices at almost 10-year highs. Now with this record crop, and even Brazil, which is the biggest exporter in the world, having a record crop as well, this could definitely help a lot of people, but not farmers, because it's going to squeeze their margins quite a bit. Corn in the U.S. is used for everything, including corn syrup, for example, in Coca-Cola. They use it, they put it in gas, they feed it to cows and chickens and everything. So it's a pretty important crop. For you and I, it's a good thing, not a good thing for farmers. U.S. suspends some sanctions on Venezuelan oil, gas, and gold sectors in exchange for some honest elections. So when you need oil to come down, turn to the dictators. Then it's okay, right? Then it's all right. Turmoil in the Middle East is keeping investors on edge. There was really big moves in gold and silver. Gold went up by 2.51% to 1982.20. It actually crossed the $2,000 mark, and silver went up 2.67% to 23.85. So the more things get unstable, let's say, the better it is for things that are denominated in dollars and things that are considered safe havens like gold and silver. Financial and banking news. De-dollarization front. China completes its first digital yuan purchase for cross-border oil payments. And the SWIFT system, if you guys don't know what the SWIFT system is, there's an international payment system that kind of connects everybody around the world and all the central banks. It's called SWIFT. The U.S. controls it. And part of the problem of Russia and China and why they want to create a different payment system is because after the whole world saw what the U.S. did to Russia, just cutting them off completely from the system, they can't make any international payments, for example, right? They're like, well, maybe we should have our own system. Well, one of the things that's really interesting is now the Chinese yuan, which is the currency from China, surpassed the euro to become the second largest currency used in the SWIFT system. You guys can see that the tides are starting to shift on the West Empire. Institute of International Finance is reinforcing fears of a financial market crisis. They're talking about record debts, high interest rates, cost of climate change, health and pension spending, and age population as well. Not a good thing at all. Costs are going to continue to increase unless we have more kids. Maybe Elon Musk, which seems to be the smartest man on the planet, had a reason that we should all have more kids. The New Zealand dollar strengthened on Monday after the conservative Christopher Luxon elected the new prime minister. The center-right National Party now is leading the new government against the communist bastards, excuse me my French, that locked down everybody and even put them in like prison camps during the pandemic. Same thing that they did in Australia. The New Zealand inflation at I really hate that the governments did that, but we'll move on. Conspiracy Marcello, not here today. The inflation in Japan was 3% for September, continuing to go down, but it's still above the 2% target for over 18 months for the Central Bank of Japan. The new inflation numbers are out, and it's running at a 5% annual basis. That means that since President Biden took office, according to the government numbers, the inflation rate or the prices have gone up by 17%, making the average family $7,300 poorer. Now, if you guys remember the burger story, tune in next week. I'll tell you guys next week. There was a video I mentioned to you guys last week of a guy going through the Costco and comparing the prices that they were there from last year, and they've gone up 75%. So if the government numbers are 17% since Biden took office, the actual number just for the last year is 75% that things have gone up by. How much poorer do you think American families have gone down rather than the government reported rate of 7,300? See where I'm getting at? Political news. As I mentioned to you guys, New Zealand ousts the leftist lockdown politicians after the conservative wins the election. Argentina has elections tomorrow. Colombia has elections next week. Only 2% of Americans have received the new thing in your arm from the CDC. Poland ruling nationalists appeared to have lost the majority in the government, which means that that's a big change in the EU because the Polish were one of the people that went against all of the things that the EU was trying to do. Jim Jordan failed to receive the conservative speakership for the U.S. House of Representatives. They're now going to move on to now the guy that's in charge is a Soros, a made guy, right? One of the guys that's part of the club, basically. UK shoplifting has gone up 25% over the last year. I explained this in the Spanish video that I just did a moment ago, but it seems like what they're doing in the West, California, all these communist states in the US, Canada, New York, Oregon, a lot of places in Europe, they want us to be worried so much, have so much fear when you're going out in the street that you're not going to get robbed or killed, that your whole life is engulfed in just worrying about crime when you walk out on the street, rather than what's really going on, which is basically you'll own nothing and be happy, 15-minute cities, et cetera, et cetera. I've been traveling around the world now. I think I did the math since I was in college. We're talking something like 20 something years, 25 years, something like that. I've lived overseas in 12 countries, 5 continents. I've been here in Colombia, kind of fixed, kind of my home now, I would say, for the last 7 or 8 years, maybe 10. And that's one of the things that I see about third world countries is it's not safe. Right? It's relatively safe, but it's not like safe. And I remember when I was in high school, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was safe. Even New York was safe. And now it's just like, it is just crazy how dangerous some of the cities are. I visited my mom in Tampa and she's just like, it's getting really dangerous. And it just kind of seems, if it's not a conspiracy, why would they be doing this? Right? NASA says that the Earth got 15% greener since the 2000s. Antarctica also, according to NASA, has added 100 billion tons of ice per year from 1992 to 2008. Climate crisis. Border Patrol representative said that the recent apprehensions of special interest Iranians at the open U.S. border, that means that it raises red flags of significant terror threat. What's going on right now in Israel, I'm going to call it, in a few years, could be as much as 5. We're going to see it happen in the United States. So prepare yourself because the preppers were right. Census data shows that almost 900,000 Californians have left the imploding state in 2022. There's a picture you guys are going to see there. And you can see the difference between a place like Florida and California. with crime, kind of the California is more leftist. It's probably the most leftist state in the United States, while Florida is one of the freer states, like Texas, for example. And now the problem is that all the Californians are going to leave, and they're going to vote the same way that made them leave the state of California, wherever they're going to go. So they're going to destroy another state. Economic news. It's not an unreasonable thing to say, right? Like California, who wants to live in California now? It used to be everybody wanted to go to California. Even Joe Rogan left California. I mean, come on. In economic news, the sales of previously owned houses, condos, and co-ops is the lowest since the housing bust in 2010. The U.S. fixed mortgage rates rises to 8% for the first time in 23 years. And just to kind of give you guys an understanding of this, a $500,000 house, 30-year mortgage at 8% is $3,700. Decent credit rating. The same guy getting the same loan, $500,000, 30-year mortgage at 3% interest rate, which was 2 or 3 years ago, the monthly payment would be $2,100. So at 3%, it's $2,100. At 8% now, it's $3,700. So somebody going out to buy a house now, it would cost them more than double than what it cost them 2 or 3 years ago. That's what the problem is in the economy right now. German economic sentiment improved by more than expected in September. Chinese economy grew by more than 4.9%, which is higher than the expected. And the biggest news I would say of this week is the U.S. Labor Department reported that Americans filing new claims for unemployment actually fell to a 9-month low. This means that there's a strong job growth, which persisted in October. Labor market remains to be tight. And remember that this is one of the numbers that the central bank of the United States uses to see if the economy is doing well or not. So if there's not a lot of people or a lowering amount of people, I know I didn't say that grammatically correct, but you guys understand me. If there's a lower amount of people every month that are asking for unemployment claims or unemployment benefits, that means the economy must be doing well. Well, if they think the economy is doing well, that means that they're going to continue to raise interest rates or leave them higher for longer, which means that the cost of everything is going to continue to be high, which is not bueno for you and I. Corporate news, Victoria's Secret representatives ditches the prioritizing wokeness over sexiness after a 5% sales drop. Who would have thought that women wouldn't idolize fat women with green hair? Twitter to charge new users in New Zealand and the Philippines $1 per year to post. Elon Musk said that it's going to be free to read, but you got to pay to post due to the fact that that's the only way to attack the bots. And Tesla also went down almost 10% after they reported their Q3 revenue that didn't meet analysts. They were off by almost $1 billion. Due to that, CEO Elon Musk lost $16 billion of his net worth as the stocks went down. And Toyota and Tesla signed an agreement to allow Toyota to use the supercharger that Tesla has. It seems like every major auto manufacturer now has made an agreement with Tesla to use their plugins to connect to the superchargers, which means that he's probably going to get richer. The gravy train for the pharmaceuticals is over. Pfizer and Moderna, their shares are down 35 and 49% respectively. Who would have thought they can't make as much money when the government isn't mandating you to take their products? Telecom giant Nokia is letting go of 14,000 jobs as profits plunge. Lucid, which is another electric car company, they fell over 5% after their production fell by over 30%, and the deliveries went down, or they did go up actually by 4%. United Airlines went down quite a bit, almost 10%, their shares, after they reported that their profit is going to eat into their Q4 with the situation with oil going up, in addition to the flight cancellations due to the Middle East. Netflix soared over 16% after they reported more subscribers than what analysts thought. It was over 8 million, actually almost 9 million new subscribers. This is due to the crackdown for password sharing. And Rite Aid Pharmacy filed for bankruptcy protection. It's going to halt all the lawsuits they have against them due to the opioid crisis. I don't know if you guys have seen that special on Netflix on how that came out, but it's a really good one. You should watch it. Taiwan Semiconductor Company, they have a 30% slump in Q3, but analysts are predicting they're going to recover in 2024. And LinkedIn, which is now owned by Microsoft, is another one of the companies that's going to lay off 3% of their 20,000 strong staff. It's funny. You think of a company like Twitter and LinkedIn. Elon Musk went in, fired more than half of the people, and it's running better than it was before. and you see LinkedIn, we should compare that. I think LinkedIn will probably have more than double the amount of workers than Twitter does. Trade news. September Singapore export fell for the 12th straight month. If you guys didn't know, Singapore, the port that they have there is one of the busiest in the world. Not good that they're declining, because that means that world, what's the word I'm looking for? World trade is continuing to collapse. I would say a lot of, or a majority, or a big percentage of all the products that come out of Asia go through the port in Singapore. It's one of the biggest in the world. I think it's the third or the second busiest in the world after China and Amsterdam. But they fell 13% last month, 22% in August. So, if the flows aren't moving, that means the economy is not doing very well. And NVIDIA, they fell over 4% after the U.S. government reportedly said that they're going to put another ban to export more chips, AI chips, to China. International events, there's more skirmishes in the South China Sea. If you guys don't know what's happening there, basically there's an international agreement that the certain amount of distance from your shore is your waters. Then after that, it's international waters. In the South China Sea, China's basically saying it's all ours. It doesn't matter what country is there. So there's a little skirmish between the Philippines and China, which is probably going to continue. The Amazon rainforest is experiencing a record number of wildfires due to the severe drought in October. The first 15 days of October, there were over 2,900 fires that broke out. The Negro River hit a level of 13.59 meters, the lowest since 1902, and it's starting to disrupt a lot of cargo ships and things like that, because there's no road in the Amazon River. Everything is done by boat. War between Israel and the Palestine began on October 7th, but it's already starting to spill over in the north as well. As I mentioned to you guys in the beginning, they're starting to get a lot of rockets from the north. They already sent tanks and things like that. And then an interesting fact, Jeff Bezos, Amazon.com founder, now has overtaken the second richest man in the world after his company, LVMH, which owns Louis Vuitton and all these luxury brands. Their sales are going down. Even rich people are starting to spend a lot less as well. And this was fascinating to me. There was an ancient solar storm that was discovered in tree rings that reveals a catastrophic event 14,000 years ago. According to Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson, there was also what seems to be asteroids that hit the Earth, caused a mega flood. Wonder what the Bible says about that. And it was the most powerful solar storm to ever hit the Earth. Imagine that. That's your news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. And remember, the preppers were right.